Hey there, I'm Lord Ethan, a Peak GM support player turned Hardstuck Diamond Hitscan OTP, and I'm the head coach for U Buffalo Esports Overwatch. I've been working with our varsity team since spring of 21, and my focus is on fundamentals, principles, standardized rules that make the game a little easier to play and understand. It's been a long while, guys, and I'm happy to return to coaching Overwatch more openly. I'm looking forward to sharing my ideas, and I'm so beyond thankful for all those who are willing to watch, engage, and resonate with, or contest against, my viewpoints. With all that said, let's get into it. Today we're looking at a VOD from a support player called Faded. They mention that this is a silver rated lobby, and that they typically main Kiriko, but often switch due to Brig because of aggressive dives. And troubles in the backline. They say any help will be greatly appreciated. So we're going to take a look at at some of this gameplay today, and see what we can contribute as far as ways to either make the dive a little easier to play against, or solutions and mindset changes to once we swap, making sure that we're still able to engage not only with our team but against their team in a way that best benefits our character and what we're playing against and with. So let's take a look. Right off the bat, I actually really love this. Oh my gosh, I really like that we're taking an off-angled position. This is really important for a couple of reasons. I'm not going to rant about all of them, but being able to come out early on a position that isn't going to be. I mean, look at where all of these arrows are pointing. That's all of the damage going towards this section, right? None of it coming to you. So you have an opportunity to jump someone, get a pick here, gather some scouting info, and operate with it. I wouldn't necessarily go for shooting the tank here. You have a little bit more time to line up your shot onto one of these squishy targets. It's a little more valuable in terms of ultimate generation, and I really like the carry poke here. You want to be really careful. Just the higher and higher up you play, not only might someone be lurking around this position, a Venture who manages to beat you to it first, and Ash who's walking down this sight line, right? That they are able to see you first, but also just that the longer you play a specific position, the more counterable you are in it, even if you're a character who's good for that position, right? I can be up close as Reaper, but the moment that Winston or Diva dive away from me, or I can be at this angle as Kiri, but as soon as Omre stickies me, or Anran jumps at me, shifts at me, things are going to start going awry. So you just want to be really careful to moderate the amount of time that you spend here. My rule is 8 seconds, and that's a little bit long here for this particular position, but you really do only have like 8 to 12 seconds to play in any one position that you're ever in, because the fight phase will change by that point. The fight will be different. So yeah, we're definitely overstaying our welcome a little bit. We see that the on-run is actually able to do exactly kind of what I mentioned. We kind of lose a little bit in the poke battle and then get pushed out of here. So just a little bit of time less, right? Be content with this spam. Don't greed for a pick here. It's not necessarily something that has to happen. It's nice if you get a pick here, but it's not necessarily what will push this fight forward, right? What will push this fight forward is just playing out normally and seeing what cooldowns and positions are taken and used, and so we can just back off there. This is a very important principle. This is very important. Closer to walls, corners, covers. Like, be within like a meter and a half, like around your walls and corners, right? So you have a really nice, easy kind of carry spam angle here, and then rotating away from it doesn't necessarily open up so many more opportunities that it's worth taking an extra step out in the open and making it just a little easier here for Gumemo to land the poke against you, right? As soon as you start taking pressure, use your cooldowns. Instead of going for the Suzu on yourself here after taking too much damage than you can justify, the moment that you start taking damage, that which is reasonably justifiable, like, oh, okay, I overstayed my welcome, I got a little bit punished for it, but I can just TP out, right? And the TP is going to be on the basis of our scouting profile. That is to say, what information are we working with at any point in time? Your scouting profile has a heavy emphasis on on enemies, where they are, where they're positioned, what cooldowns or aggression they might be utilizing or maintaining. When really you want to have a full profile. You also want to know where your team is. That way you have an idea of where you need to go when you start taking damage. This is another important principle: damage taken timings. When are you taking damage, and is it damage that you can justify, right? If I'm peeking out against a Widowmaker and I get one shot, maybe, you know, you could actually go back and forth. That might be worth it, right? Kiri has some really nice TTK on the Widow. They both have some nice counterplay against each other, and there's you know, the scenario depends on if you're just wandering around out in the open or if you're taking some really nice you know, corner peeks. But if you're trying to duel a Reinhardt and you're taking damage while walking backwards while he holds his shield, right, then that's a little less justifiable, right? So is the damage here that you're taking from the Onron, is this really going to is this a risk that's going to have a significant payoff? Is it a matchup that you really should be taking, right? I think dueling her for a little bit isn't a bad thing, but if you wanted to duel the Onron, then really it's pretty much as soon as we're right here that we see her and we're like, okay, I want to start forcing her abilities out rather than going for pot shots on a Domina, which again yields a little less ult charge, and Mizuki, which is a highly valuable target, but as soon as he LOSs you, you can then LOS them, right? So there's a lot of different things it looks like you're trying to do here, and I would just limit those to just one thing, right? Either establish a scouting profile, get your angle, and do a little bit of spam damage, try to go for one of those picks, and then get out, or take a duel and then disengage after taking only the damage that you can justify having taken for the endeavor that is fighting that duel. I hope that makes sense. This is we're gonna get really familiar with the word slop that I'm capable of. So poking out the Mizuki, changing to Onron, stepping away from cover, and then now you just have to TP back to your team, right? As opposed to going for the greedy Suzu. That's just, it's so utilitous for your whole team. Now, I like this. I like the connections. I like the connections that are happening. But I want to take a close examination of our movement, right? Really close to a corner here, which is really nice. I don't really care for the back and forth strafing. I forgot to mention that. You want to do you want to add some left-right strafing. I think that this is controller, which is really awesome. God, console Overwatch is actually so fun to play. I'm so horrible at the sticks, and so I really admire anyone who can use controller to aim. It's very, very difficult for me. I need a mouse because I need my crutches in order to be able to walk. So this movement, I struggle with just a little bit. Know where your corners are, know where your cover is, and know where your out is. I think we haven't used our TP yet, and like getting TP to establish a little bit of range or distance against the Onron, who is a bad matchup for Kiri at close range, especially if you are having to swing really wide left and right with your controller, while also trying to nail the precise movement that it takes to dodge some of Onron's abilities, which, by the way, some of them just like are barely dodgeable as it is, right? So if we're thinking about how Kiri plays into the specific matchup of Onron, or even if you wanted to broaden it up a little bit and say, you know, you could consider Genji, Tracer, even Reaper to a certain extent, you could think about Echo, right? Really, the closer some of these enemies are to Kiriko, sometimes it's a little more advantageous for them, right? I love running up to Kiriko's as Torbjorn because I'm oddly shaped and I can just walk at them, look up like I want uppies, and then smack them in the face with my right click, right? That's not necessarily going to be the case every time, right? And there's going to be Genjis who are more comfortable trying to outpoke you. There's going to be Onrons who want to light you on fire and then go for the shift, right? There's going to be plenty of Torbjorns who are happy to just sit behind and hammer their turret. But at the end of the day, you want to have you want to kind of build up an understanding of how some of these characters really play into each other, and also just at the end of the day, know how your character wants to play into them. If Onron wants to close the distance, then you want to keep that a little bit maximized, right? You want to keep your distance against her because you're able to force her to constantly change. Oh my goodness, the Kiri's just walking away from me. Now I have to play over here. Oh, Kiri's walked away. Now I have to play over here. Or I have to pick a new target, right? So you can avoid the ire of the Onron, lead her to your team, or just play your ranges and outpoke. And so here you have an ability that will let you kind of reestablish an advantage over a character that is wanting to take this matchup. No, we end up forcing her out, which is in my opinion, some really nice care. Obviously, your Suzu on yourself establishes a huge advantage in this duel and buys you a little bit of time. You also land a little bit of, it looks like 2 damage instances against her, forces her form, and then I don't even know what to call that, and then leads her right back into the Reaper. So I do really like that. We just want to make sure that we're using our abilities. And my big rule is if you have it, use it, right? So if you have the ult, use the ult. If you have a cooldown, use the cooldown. They help you not only in your in these individual scenarios, but they also help you move the fight forward, and that's what you're always looking to do. Move the fight forward faster than the enemy team, so that they're less comfortable or less prepared with how they have to respond for how you have. I think about it like a story. Push the story forward, right? Make these fights reach their climax by turning the pages a little bit faster. We're going for these for this poke. Be careful. I think it's possible that that your movement is messing up your aim a little bit. I do see a little bit too much jumping. I'm not a big fan of jumping. Trying to keep our fingers off the jump key is an important habit. I know that a lot of people like to keep their APM high, but jumping kind of does a couple of things. It messes up your crosshair placement. It kind of makes your movement really predictable. It changes your momentum as well. Once you start jumping, you can't do anything else until you're done jumping. And then it also raises your center of mass and makes you easier to hit. So cutting out the jumping is actually to only when you should or need to jump is a really nice habit to establish pretty early on, especially as you start climbing more and more to the ranks where people are going to be able to really punish you while jumping. I think it's kind of like crouching in Valorant, but someone will probably have to correct me on that. I just know that I've heard a lot like to stop crouching in Valorant. But I also know there's a level where you have to, or there are points where you have to crouch. So I don't know. Someone correct me there. After this point, right, I want to take a look at the aim and the movement. So moving left and then aiming right, and then moving left, right. So I'm curious if these shots are a little harder to hit because you're not totally aligned with the mechanics that are needed to land these shots, in which case start minimizing what you have to do, right? You've managed to clear this angle. That's something that we know, right? You got rid of the on-ron. The shield is up here instead of like in your face here. So all you need to do is just stand still and shoot. Now, that's not really a great habit. You want to make sure that you're moving and shooting and constantly rotating and kiting and traversing. But at the end of the day, if you have a little bit of time that you can just stand still and make sure that you just land these shots, especially really important ones like against this backline here, on this off angle that is really nice, by the way. This is exactly where I put you. And I have you leave as soon as it's appropriate, right? But I absolutely, if you're playing for my team, I absolutely have you running for these picks here, right? Just make sure that your movement and your aim are a little more in sync, right? Stand still if you need to, and then be careful. I think we saw you fanning a little bit wide when you can really just stop right here. You don't have to move further left at this point. Okay, nice. Yeah, I don't think we've seen much healing up until this point, and now that's fine. They're called supports for a reason, right? But if the name of the game is to build your ult so that you can use it, so that you can build it back as quickly as possible, then one of the other things that you should be thinking about early on is building your ult. Those are some really nice connections, by the way. A little too much jumping from my taste, and obviously you're a little too close for this corner. I was actually playing earlier this afternoon and was thinking to myself, holy smokes, I need to keep in mind when people are respawning, so that I know when my threats are coming back, right? Because you definitely want an idea that this on-ron is approaching you, and I don't hear her footsteps. There's enough going on that I don't hear her like until right around she rounds this corner, right? And as soon as I see her, and she's not someone that you've scouted, right? So she's kind of jumping you. You're at half HP. I'm turning and I'm TPing. But there hasn't been enough of doing like regular 360s and making sure that you know where everyone is in the lobby at all times, right? That is going to be really good for helping you understand your TP network. Not to mention the fact that you have now been limited to what you can do on this angle. The Dominus shield is up. The supports are just a little too close, or you would have to move up a little too far into some of your threats. The Reaper and the On-Ron who have come back. Actually, I think now it's an Emre. Maybe he never died actually. No, he did. So you would be kind of inting here if you were to move up. You've gotten some really nice pressure on the Domina, but your Moira needs help, and you guys could use a little bit of frontline pressure. Your Moira is down now, so there's a lot of reasons. There's a whole matrix of reasons for you to consider TPing back to your team, seeing about building your ultimate through a couple of different means. You never want to do it just the one way, right? So we get a Suzu to equalize this duel a little bit, right? And then we have to kind of look for our TP network, right? So instead, I would have an out prepared, right? I do want to mention, I'm going to mention this probably once or twice. There's just not enough climbing for me. Kiri can climb. She can climb for free. It's not a cooldown. It's a consistent passive. It's something that she gets as part of being part of the Shimada clan. And so because of that, you should be doing it, right? The same way that the game lets you build an ult, you should use your ult when you have it. You have these cooldowns that I'm enticing you to use. I've not complained about the Suzu usage, even though it is a utility that should be not reserved for your team, but used at the most appropriate times on the targets that will help establish the biggest advantages or the most consistent advantages for you, right? And I would say self-Suzuing there on the off angle when you're engaged on targets by yourself isn't really conducive to winning the fight overall as a team. We clearly don't. It's not as if the Suzu was incorrect, and the Suzu was helpful for you in the context of those duels, which you wanted to take, right? To that end, I guess it's a good Suzu, right? You wanted to use it for yourself, but would a Suzu healing onto your Moira in the previous fight, would you have been able to Suzu your Reaper while he was in? We could go back and look, but at the end of the day, there's probably some more creative uses that you could be going for. And generally, when we're looking at cooldowns in Overwatch and hero kits in Overwatch, you really want to try to lean into doing all of the things that these things can do. When you're taking a breather as a Roadhog, you really like having the healing, but the damage resistance is actually really, really nice as well. When you're playing, say, Moira, right? You've got the fade to cleanse, to kite, to send yourself somewhere else, to go deeper into their backline, and to buy time for your orbs. We call it ability cycling. It's a constant, or it's a principal idea of Doomfist, of Moira, and a couple of other notable characters, right? So not only should we be climbing walls a little more to get good positions, nice vantage points, to lose the marks that we have on ourselves when you get marked by an enemy, when you're scouted and when you're pinged, right? You can wall jump around so that they peek around the corner. They don't see you on the ground, right? You've climbed up to some high ground, or just climbed up a wall and are just on your way back down. Whatever, right? They might lose the mark. There's all kinds of reasons to always be climbing. So not enough climbing for me. And then on top of that, if Suzu can cleanse, if it can heal, if it can do all of these things, grant immortality, then I also have you using Suzu for all of those different things. Then rather than just cleansing flames off of yourself to help you win a duel that isn't itself a condition to winning this fight, right? And sorry, I don't want to be too complicated here, but picking the on-run on this off angle, it does help you play the off angle longer, but if you're losing the main angle, then your off angle doesn't really do enough. And if there's not another DPS with you, then or another character with you, right? Your tank, your Reaper, your whatever, then not only are you in a vulnerable position, but you're also kind of playing the game isolated, and that's going to reduce the options that you have, like we ended up seeing with those teleports that you were just a little bit late to realize, oh, I have an out to my Ashe, but my Ashe is in a bad spot. I might have just known to turn around and climb. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. We're going to try and move forward here. So I do like the healing. Again, it's not necessarily because, oh, you're on support, you should be healing. It's just what helps you build ult the fastest, right? You are not leading the lobby right now. Their Domina has her ult. Their Juno is close to beating you, and she hasn't died yet. You and your Moira have both died, but Moira's leading you by 1%. Now, is that a big deal? Absolutely not. But ideally, in this kind of scenario, you should actually find it really, really straightforward, or rather, you shouldn't have to wonder where your ultimate generation is going to be coming from, right? You get into a game, you lock your composition, and you're already kind of understanding who and where you want to be to get that ult, right? So I see that I have a Reinhardt, and I've locked Ana or Baptiste, right? So I know that Reinhardt's going to be one of my batteries, right? I'm playing Zenyatta, and I see in the first fight that they have Roadhog and I don't even know. I see that they have Roadhog and Reaper, right? So I know that those are going to be the ones who are threatening to me, but also the ones I can farm damage off of, right, consistently. So so I really like the healing because it's a reliable source of ult charge. I don't mind the TP to to get cleanse on the fire. You're still a little way, too far away from walls, corners, and covers here, and then you're jumping around, which again makes you a little easier to hit. It's a little easier, I think, if you just back up to this corner and then wall climb up to this position. It gives you a new spot, drops the mark off of them that they have on you. You can also do damage from this high ground, and you can also have still a good position from which to heal your teammates if they're playing in ways that allow you to see them from here, right? It's not as if the cooldown usage here is bad. I actually do like you using the cooldown as opposed to not using the cooldown. But if your alternative is to use the other parts of Kiri's kit to get into positions that are still good for her, right? Then you can probably save that cooldown for when you get forced out of that position or when you need to reposition, like here, right? Instead of just dropping off of this high ground, right? Might you have been able to TP to this angle? Not at this time, by the way. Don't TP onto this, and I would rather you just keep high ground, poke out the Juno, and then heal your team from height here. I don't know that you have to drop off the height. Let's see, but that's an example. Oh yeah. So I don't really like that TP. I would have you instead either off angle like you've been comfortable with to look for a pick off on Juno, or just stay up here and then heal the team and be ready to Suzu. If you do want to drop, then I might actually walk all the way through here to set up an angle here. But this is really hard. This is a really awkward position, and you're probably going to make things even more complicated for yourself if you just TP into the middle of your team's core, as opposed to just playing your angles in good positions on Kiri here. So let's see. Yeah. So you are right here, right about this time. It's interesting as well to imagine if you had just climbed up here, it would be very, very easy for you to just drop down here or maintain your position up there because that's advantageous, and then just poke out the Juno, force them to start backing up so that your team can move through, and then you can just heal them from this position. I generally believe that doing the right thing in Overwatch leads you to the next right thing to do, right? So it's interesting how this position is a focal point to one of these potential options that you could have explored. It's interesting how this might have helped you come to the next right conclusion. However, I do want to remark, as early as this point, you could also be looking to just cross the bridge using this barrier that's come up to take control of this health pack here, and then just manipulate this high ground, right? So that instead of being forced to play over there, you're playing over here, which I think is even a little weaker for Onron. I don't know that she has the vertical mobility to get up there from one of these positions, unless maybe she like shifts off of this thing. But I haven't played her like at all. I've been OTPing Emre. So I'm not sure what she's capable of in that particular matchup, but it is another potential option that you're just not moving here as you should. I generally don't like negative movement. So if you're moving in one direction, right, to get to your next good spot, as opposed to like shimmying back and forth, undecided about where you're going to play next, you always want to be thinking about where you want to play next in 8 to 12 seconds, because that's generally the amount of time that that fight phases in Overwatch occur. That is, gosh, I'm not going to lecture on fight phases, but essentially, if you're looking at a fight in Overwatch, it has like an engage phase, a couple of mid-fight phases, sometimes an ultimate phase, and then it has a closing, right? Where you get the rest of the picks or things reset, right? And you set it for the next starting phase of the fight. And so you have about 8 to 12 seconds for each of those to occur, and so you're always thinking, in 8 seconds, where do I want to be, right? And the other principle that I wanted to mention is map control. Map control and timing are like the two core principles to Overwatch 2. If you ask me, I like to keep it to 2 to make things really, really simple. And so if you're thinking about the positions of the map that you can reasonably control as Kiri, it's this high ground position, it's this high ground position, right? It's this high ground position. You'll notice all of those are high ground as opposed to low ground, because it's just it really is that advantageous. I remember listening to Stylosa Frito of Your Overwatch years and years and years ago, for years on end, about, oh, you got to play the high ground. Hey guys, it's Frito from Your Overwatch, you got to play the high ground, all that stuff. I love Stylosa, by the way. And it really is just that good. They're raving and ranting for very good reason about just playing on high ground and maintaining your positions there. I lose so many games of Overwatch because I just drop from the height for no reason. The other thing that contributes to map control is health packs. This is map control, right? So imagine stationing yourself on height where you still have really good angles, where the Onron might not be able to get to you, where the Reaper has to TP, or the Onron has to nade jump. Sorry, they don't have a Reaper. Where the Genji has to dash, right? Where Juno has to double jump, or she's probably double jumping anyways because everyone jumps like all the way up to like low GM. People just spam their jump keys, and you could probably get a really nice probably get really nice poke. And if you take damage, instead of having to Suzu yourself, instead of having to TP into the core of your team, which I don't generally like because I like for everyone to be in different positions where you can still see and help each other and participate in the fight, but where you're playing kind of according to your own character's rules, right? Like Kiri doesn't want to play on the low ground in the middle of their team, the same way that like Genji or Reaper or Onron or whoever might want to, right? By the way, no one wants to play in the middle of the enemy team, maybe unless you're Maga going in for a shift. But instead of having to do any of that, you can just grab a health pack, right? As opposed to Suzuing or TPing or wherever, right? So it's possible as early on as this point, right? You're actually establishing disadvantages against yourself. You take a little bit of damage. Your Ramatra takes too much damage, so isn't comfortable moving anywhere. Your Moira's been forced to yellow orb instead of purple orb, which might be some nice early pressure. Your Moira's also faded into to help you, and you've had your TP forced out of you. All the while, I want to zoom out on the map and take a look at this, because this is really, really important. This has happened over 1, 2, okay, so, I want to see when you start here. Okay, so again, not going to lecture fight phases, that's for a different video, but this is pretty much when things are going to get started for you guys. You're still waiting on your Ashe, but the on-run is engaged, we're already taking damage, our Reaper is in, right? And you're here in this position. There's a reason that I've zoomed out all this way, by the way. We'll get to there in just a second. Your Reaper goes down, you take this off angle, your Ramatra goes critical, here's the Moira orb, here's you guys being restored to full HP, here's you going half HP now, and then forcing the on-run out with your Moira. 3 of us critical health. That makes it very difficult to move the fight forward, by the way. What are we going to do when we're critical health, right? We're going to stand behind our covers and heal, and then we'll be comfortable re-engaging, but our Ramatra is already looking to contest the objective from the low ground, right? So if Overwatch 2 boils down to 2 principles, those being timing and map control, then we're kind of timing our Ramatra, aren't we? By taking all of this damage, instead of just playing our covers, playing our high grounds, waiting for our Ashe to respawn, right? We take a duel with Onron from a lower ground position where she can reach us very easily at range she's very comfortable with, and then we take all of this damage, and all the while my Ramatra is sitting here moving towards the objective, being like, oh shoot, my whole team is critical, and I'm here on the low ground. Uh-oh. I'm alone. My team has to regen. Anyways, there's a whole matrix of information there. But the thing that I wanted to mention here is, here's where you start. And all of these things happen. All of these things occur. Your Ramatra on low ground, the Moira orbs, the going crit HP. And you have this whole time not moved anywhere, right? I mean, you've moved, right? We see the icon moving. Although if we zoom out far enough, and that's the joke here, that's the gimmick, you actually just haven't moved, even though the fight has changed, right? And the rules have kind of changed. The scenario is a little bit different now than when it started, right? We've looked at these other positions that you could have agency from. This high ground right over here, right? I didn't like you taking the Onron duel here, but I don't mind you taking the Juno duel here, right? Obviously, it's a little bit different, right? I also wouldn't even mind if you had a teammate all the way out here for you to TP, and that way you could use the long sight line, right? But the TP here is just a little bit too narrow. That's also why I really liked the idea of you just moving out here instead of using a TP to TP into the core of your team, which is where Onron wants to be, right? And that might be the same with a Maga or a Genji or a Wrecking Ball, right? You don't want to TP into his Slam, you don't want to TP into Genji's Blade, you don't want to TP into the Maga Stomp, right? So on and so forth. That's a nice dodge on the yeah, that's a very nice dodge on the Domino ult. But this is a fight that you guys do end up having to lose. There's a lot of reasons to it, and we can't go into all of that. We're talking mostly principles here. And in general, you know, this is a silver gold rated lobby, and I'm kind of scratching some high level principles here. But like when we're thinking about like timing map control, playing high grounds, using our ultimates when we have them so that we can build them as quickly as possible, using our cooldowns, and all that, you know, there's some really intricate nuance when it comes to Overwatch. But like this is also the kind of stuff like dedication to these kinds of fundamentals are what separate like the absolute highest level teams, right? Are the ones who don't take damage when they shouldn't, and the ones who do take damage when they shouldn't, right? There's a difference between those teams, right? And so if we moderate our gameplay according to some of these fundamentals, some of these rules, I find personally it's a little easier at least to understand where things are going wrong. I may still dislike the way that my Doomfist is inting and feeding, but I can still die after dropping off the height and sit there and realize, oh, well, I could have just maintained my presence on the high ground. I'm the one who dies with my ult and says, I literally just needed to ult, right? I'm the one who misuses my cooldown, and I can say, based on the rules of my matchup, the duel that I was taking, or the position that I was playing, or my proximity to this health pack, I didn't need to do that, right? And so at the very least, you can make these things easier, or make this game a little easier to understand, right? Be careful about chasing the Onron, right? You have other ranges that you can monopolize, and honestly, you have other positions that you could be taking. You want to be thinking about where you want to set up for this fight, kind of on the basis of like where the objective is going to be, which is where your teams are probably going to concentrate this fight around, right? So so be careful about getting led on by the Onron. You don't want to be on her leash, especially since that's kind of how she wants you playing, right? The Onron wants you to follow her into close dark corners so that she can absolutely mug you for all the loose change, all the quarters that you've got in your pockets in this economy, right? So I would oh no, that's okay. I prefer 5 gates. 5 gates on the Kitsune Rush. You always want to be ulting in positions where we've got all 5 gates to play in. I actually understand what we're going for here, and I'll tell you, you know what I really love about this ult? You know what I actually like really like about this ultimate? We have it, so we use it. And this is so incredibly important. I yell at GM players about this. I had a VOD review with the Zarya player a little while ago where we looked at a recording. Maybe I'll make it public at one point. It's an unlisted link right now. But we looked at a VOD review where my contention was, we looked at a point where the Zarya player should have just ulted. And I was like, this is your earliest opportunity to ult, like you should have ulted here, right? And we deliberate on it. I show it to other high-level Zarya players, you know, my champion tank player, my champion, like Zarya, like main tank player says, no, you're wrong about that, other high-level players. And then I get a message from this guy that I've VOD reviewed where I was like, you just need to ult, right? Like months later, and he's like, by the way, I finally made it into high GM. I finally pushed myself out of the trenches of low GM, and it was just ulting when I had it. So that's what I really like about this Kitsune Rush. You just want to make sure that you get your 5 gates. That's it. Whether it is down this quarter, which I don't really care for, I would rather have it towards the objective. So I think that you had kind of the right angle to go for the rush here, and it's just the execution that got missed. So and that's where, again, timing and map control, right? So am I in the position that I want to be, right? And if not, be willing to take the time to make sure that you're in the position, and then take the time to line up your aim and go for the cast there. Just take your time. It reminds me of the Persona 5 loading screen. Take your time, right? And that's really important. You don't want to take too much time. You don't want to slow the pace of the game down. You want to move it forward, but you can only move it forward if you are doing it in, you know, the most correct way possible. So good, well-timed rush, by the way. Really well-timed rush. It's just unfortunate that it didn't end up quite in the position. Hey, nice climbing, marvelous. I really love this. I had taken a peep through these VODs that you had posted earlier. We ended up choosing the Colosseo one as opposed to the others, and I'd seen that it was close, and I'm beginning to understand why it was close. Is we're actually getting some really nice moments from you. A well-timed rush cast. I like the way that your team played that, generally speaking, and I also like the off angle that you took. And the climbing. Oh, I like the climbing a lot. I don't like the jumping. Stop jumping. Stop jumping. It's a bad habit. It is a bad habit. And the moment that you break it, I actually promise you, you will see improvements. You will actually see improvements in how you're able to take duels, the damage that you're taking, closer to walls, corners, and covers. If you're out in the open, it's very easy to take damage. And damage in Overwatch ramps up very quickly, from insignificant, which is the damage you don't have to worry about, to significant, which is the damage that forces you to take cover, to lethal, which is the damages that send you to respawn, right? So if you're playing out in the open where 5 people can all look at you, right, like our Ramatra is, now sometimes the tank has to, although tanks actually have to, for tank players in particular, it is the most important principle, is like damage taken timings, right, and angles, but angles that are important in FPS in general. Anyways, if you're playing a position where all 5 people are going to shoot you, that damage is not going to be insignificant, right? It's going to be very quickly lethal. And so if you're playing like 1.5 meters away from your corner, right, you're going to be able to be looked at, the easier you are to be able to be looked at, then the easier you're going to be able to be to have damage dealt against. I generally like all of this. Actually, be careful. I actually hug this wall here. Just the way that angles work, it's interesting that you move back into the line of sight of like 3 of them to take cover here, when really you could just stay in your cover here, right? Angles are so fascinating. I love the way that they work, although I am not a geometrist. STEM stuff went right over my head. But for all of our engineers out there, engineer, Overwatch players, the doctors and lawyers and all of the smart people, you guys should all know angles are very, very important, right? So play them, play the cover, right? You're also a little more, well, actually you're more proximate to you're closer to this cover, but this cover is just safer. And you also get to maintain a nice line of sight in your Ramatra, and you can move up if he moves up, and you get to open up this angle. So like, bro, I don't know how else to say it. Like, angles are insane. Like, the fact that you're just vulnerable and visible to 5 people here, and then you just aren't, right? But really, you really abuse that. I mean, angles are so important. So you walk back into the line of sight of 3 to heal your tank. Your tank is backing up. You might have also been able to heal him here. You would have also seen your TP links, right? You'd have seen your Torbjorn. You would have been able to heal him. You still have good Suzu cast. And at the end of the day, you're close to walls, corners, and covers, and you can climb. So what if if you get into pressure, right? Then you can actually just climb up and jump onto this high ground and figure out how you're going to get back to your team from there. It's a very, very important principle that isn't going to apply quite yet, but it's called it's always safer in than out. And that is the idea that if I'm being pressured, if I'm in danger, that I'm going in not into their formation, but like into other areas of the map that help me establish positions where I can still maintain some level of like defensible aggression, right? It's the justifiable positions, the damage that I can say, it's okay if I take this as long as I'm not taking other damage, right? It is the positions from which I can do damage and healing and build my ultimate charge, right? So it's always safer in than out. Now, the in that you're going here is not safe, but it's okay if you want to jump up to this high ground and use this high ground position, right? It's okay if you want to set up with your Reaper, right, and have an angle on not only his targets that he's shooting, so it could be 2 versus 1, right, as far as the damage that we're applying to one of them, or you're healing onto him so that he's able to last here as long as possible, right? He's even hindered. Does he end up going down here? Yeah, that's really unfortunate. I actually really like the idea of you playing with your Reaper and kind of enabling him here. It's a little bit more high level, the 3 rule sets that we play Overwatch by, right? That's going to be the character's rule set. What does our character do, and how do they want to play? The matchup rule set, what am I playing against, and how do they want me to play? How do I avoid that, right? And how do I make my character's strength good against their character's weaknesses? And then my composition, right? Who am I playing with, right? Wouldn't my Reaper like to have an off angle from his Kiri so that he can stay in a little bit longer, or when he gets hindered, he gets enough healing to buy him enough time to press the shift and get out? I actually talked about that in another VOD, like just like a week and a half ago with another person who had left a ping in the Overwatch Discord. Very, very cool that there's so many people who are looking for coaching, and it's fantastic that there's so many coaches there as well. I'd be so fascinated to see what some of the other coaches say. There are some really, really brilliant viewpoints that a lot of these folks have, and they all see the game much differently than I. So where I'm ready to bog us down in details and how would you say, and the pedanticness of my approach, some of these other coaches, they'll just get straight to the point, which is more helpful for a lot of players. So just be careful. This map traversal, I don't really care for, right? Can you do damage? Can you do healing just by maintaining your position here? Probably, right? Would you have a limited amount of time to do so? Yes, right? Remember, 8 to 12 seconds is about as much time as you have to spend in a certain position. And honestly, at this point, I'm probably looking to send in here and just see if I can trade or get a pick. Because or actually, what is more advisable? Okay, so I want to do that if I want to be greedy and I want to try to get my ult, right? Really, what we should be doing is dying on or as close to the objective as quickly as possible, right? Because we don't want them to move it for free, and we do want to reset with our team. We want to catch the wave respawn, right? So you guys actually kind of prolong the inevitable here, and you don't establish 2 different waves, but your team is now engaged with them. Oh boy. Timing and map control. Here's the timing. We fought them as 3 while on the timeline where 2 of us were respawning, right? So that's troublesome, right? And it's troublesome that our teammates are doing that, right? But also, I saw us doing it here against the Freya, right? It was you and Moira and someone else while we were waiting for the Ashe to respawn, right? And then while we were waiting for the Reaper to respawn, we were still over here, right? So it's like across the board, we're not really adhering to a timeline and timers that really help us and each other. This is really scary. So this is why I talk about scouting profiles, right? If we can't see anything, what can we hear? What can we gather, right? If we're looking from our POV, we see that the Reaper has gone critical, right? So we know that he is probably in danger, right? And so is he going to be the best TP target? We see that the Moira is there and then fades out of our view. We see that she is critical as well, right? But we don't really know what we're TPing into. We could know. It takes a little bit of consideration. They have a Domina. They have an Emre. They have the Mizuki. And so not only can they stun and what is it called? The root from Mizuki. Not only can they stun and root me, they can also spam me out with damage and apply these statuses like the fire. And so even if this is a space where Juno is going to play, all the rest of them would love to be in here. And so you just want to be really careful. You don't want to get back out to the fight as quickly as possible, but we might have lost that luxury because our team engaged without us, right? And because you and your Torbjorn ended up kind of staggering maybe a little bit too long, right? If you had died a little bit quicker on the objective as soon as the fight ends, are we able to get out there as early as possible with the team so that we're not compelled to have this really rugged TP, right? I don't mind the Suzu, although you might have been able to hold it. I'm not a big fan of like holding cooldowns, and it is really tough that you just end up in a position where we end up getting Domina ulted. Based on the way that like the whole team played that, there's really not much of an option that you have there. But again, if you don't TP there, then maybe it frees you up to let one or two of your team die here, but you get a really nice Suzu onto your Rom with ult so that he can walk back out into the open. Maybe you're able to contest someone here on the high ground, or stop the bot from moving, right? Play the objective, help your Torbjorn, right? I've already mentioned that your Reaper would probably love if you took an off angle with them in particular and bought them more time to do some of this damage and apply this pressure and build the ults that they want to do, right? So we're talking all the time about how you should be building your ult because that helps move the game forward, but also you should be helping your teammates build their ults as well, right? Because that is overall going to help you guys win some of these very, very difficult fights. Okay, so we go for the mindset. We go for the change here. Here's the Brig as opposed to the Kiri. It wasn't necessarily the dive that we were struggling with, but it was really, really challenging to keep our team sustained while also doing the damage that we wanted, right? And then of course we didn't have the ult that we wanted to have earlier. Swapping at 61 to ult isn't too bad either. It's a little bit tough. I prefer to swap like after ult casts, and so maybe the Brig swap is a little bit late or it's a little bit too early. You might have been able to still do things on Kiri here, but it might have been a little bit challenging. Be careful about swinging past the shield. This is some really aggressive stuff here. So if we're looking at the overhead, I think that there's definitely a lot of angles that you're vulnerable towards here, right? We're going to be vulnerable to the Juno. We are in with a lot of our team. The Coalescence is up, the Annihilation is up. So when I'm saying it's always safer in than out, maybe you're actually adhering very closely to that principle here. Maybe I shouldn't dislike the int as much. I think that what I do dislike about it is that it's too far away from corners and covers. I think that maybe hurts your Let's see. We bash. Oh, the movement is really strange actually. Hold on, take a look at this. You remember earlier when I was like just follow through, like just stick with what you're doing, right? Stick to one thing. We get stunned here, and then we're going to move forward. We're going to bash forward. Actually, we end up like moving right first instead of moving forward immediately, right? And that's fine. And then we move forward here. And then we move backwards, which is really interesting. It actually makes us kind of, I think we actually miss I think we missed the primary fire here, in fact, because we end up backwards. So Overwatch players do this thing where we make all kinds of like little steps that don't make any sense at all. And so we want to be really mindful of like, is the movement that we're committing ourselves to, is every step exactly where I want to be? There's definitely not quite enough shield holding, and because you are out this far, and you don't back up to this corner, you don't back up to this corner, right? You're going to end up susceptible to a lot of damage here, and so you just end up going down. You have some really nice nice participation in the fight, but one of the important things about Overwatch is where you can, you must live, right? And so this is an instance, I think, where you can hold your barrier a little bit better. You can probably play your corners a little safer, a little smarter, and then go from there. Also, I don't know that I've seen enough whip shots from you, not gonna lie, and I understand that you don't want to boop your targets away from your whip shot, but like that's a final blow onto their on-ron. There's a final blow or a wall smack, especially if you have the perk onto the Domina here. It's an ability that at one point I think you can get a perk where Inspire is even a little bit stronger if you're landing your whip shots, and it's an ability that you have. You also don't use any of your biscuits here, so even though you're generating the ultimate charge from all of this aggression that you have, you're missing out on the ultimate charge from dying, and then you're also, because you weren't playing your corners and your walls, your cover, but also because you aren't using any of your abilities, right? We're solely focused on the Domina, when again, remember, we want to be doing all of the different things that our characters can do, right? So with Kiri, that's wall climbing. With Suzuing, that's cleansing, right? As well as granting the invuln. With Brig, that's armor packing, right? So on and so forth. Yeah, keep an eye on that revive. Yep, and get in as quickly as possible. Be careful just in general about packing our tanks. That's not a bad biscuit onto your tank there. I call them biscuits, or cookies. But you do want to be careful. And be careful about running into the Dom. Dom is not actually Dom isn't a weak matchup against Brig. And so they definitely have options against each other. So you just want to be really careful. And also remember, if you're playing in a position where all 5 of them can look at you, the damage is not insignificant, right? So you might actually get burned for this kind of aggression. Now it's interesting that you go all that aggressive, and then now you're all the way back, right? You're actually behind your Moira, which is even interesting. You're behind your Torb and his turret, right? Is that really where we would expect to see Brig? Could you, instead of backing all the way up, just play a little safer around this corner? I understand that we're kiting the Ray, but we might have forfeited that opportunity. We might have forfeited that as an option as soon as we went all the way in. Not to mention, if the Ray is being sent this direction, then don't we want to be moving up? And if we don't want to be moving up into all 5 of them, which is absolutely advisable, our Reaper is alone again. You might have actually been able to be Kiri still and set up on off angles with him and buy him time. This is a 2v2 if you're actually looking for an opportunity to be in with your flanker DPS, right? So if we don't want to be in against all 5 of them on this angle, then at the very least, we could probably just move over here and use this as an angle to be a little bit more in, right? You're still pushing towards their side of the map, right? You're still helping to be safe, right? And go from there. But this is a little bit scary, right? You're walking into where the Ray is going. You're behind your team. You're not within your effective range, right? We're just kind of jumping around in the middle of the open. I like the cover that you're taking against the threats, so the Ray and the Emre ult, man, it's tough. If you actually just go for the whip shot a little bit sooner, like I know for a fact that you land that too, right? You're actually tracking her really, really nicely. And then it's just when she goes for the mobility cooldown that you miss your time. So again, timing and map control. If you use your ability as you're watching them, right? If you take the early opportunity to use that ability, again, I watch. This is really nice tracking, by the way. This is really nice tracking, right? So I just need you to press the ability key, right? And then you win. But she got her ability press off first, right? So you got timinged, right? Stop jumping. Oh, stop jumping. Stop jumping. If you take nothing else from this VOD review, because I am word slop incarnate and I have to talk about every single little detail, if you get nothing else, walls, corners, and covers, and stop jumping. You gotta stop jumping. I also like more ability presses. It's tough that you only just built your ultimate. That might have been really, really useful, but hey, if you have it, use it. Go for the ult here. Hold your shield. You can hold your shield more, right? You absolutely do want to, right? See how you're able to buy time for the Reaper, right? And it's unfortunate that your movement actually leads you away from him, right? If you take all of this damage, you absolutely have to back up, but if you just hold your shield at this position, you don't have to move anywhere. Your Reaper sees that you are going for the rally, and he's going to say, okay, I can move up, right? So he moves up, but by this point, you're timing your Reaper at a time where he is moving in with his ultimate. You are walking away in pursuit of a 1 HP on-run. Should you be getting this kill? Absolutely, but could you be helping your Reaper first, or after, or more efficiently? Maybe, right? See actually how you even have 2 extra steps. Instead of just going for, do you have a whip shot? Instead of just going for the ranged whip shot ability, you have to walk up, and that's steps away from your Reaper, who is now susceptible to a lot of damage, right? Not all 5 of them. There's been enough of them that are dead that he's not going to get hurt that badly, but he's out in the open. You might have to help him there, right? So This is a really nice fight overall. It's tough that your ROM dies, and we definitely want to be helpful of our teammates. Be careful. We're all stacked up on top of the same spot. That means all of the Emery spam. That means all of the Farah missiles. All of the Roadhog scrap. All of the junk spam are all going onto this same position, which means all of us are taking that damage. Right. It only takes one person to move the objective here in the push game mode, which means you should be looking to play your walls, corners, covers away from the objective. You guys have one person who stands on, and the rest of us are looking to play spots that our characters are good at. For Brig, that's going to be some of these. That's going to be, well, close to walls, corners, and covers, but also at ranges where she can peek out and go for whip shots, and where she is in line of sight of all of her allies there. I like this aggression. Now what we would want to do is start moving into here. It's always safer in than out. You can help lead your team in, and you draw a little bit of aggression. You have the you have your shield. Your Moira should be winding cold to support your in, and also enable your team to push in. That's how it would play out in a higher level lobby. So I'm glad that you don't int there. You back up calmly with your team. We wind up for the Cole. Give your Moira a biscuit. Go in with the annihilate. Okay, yeah, okay. So this plays out a little bit differently than I would have it play out in a slightly higher level lobby. But you guys have the right ideas, and I like that you're playing within those conditions. I would be losing in a silver lobby because I am trying to play the game in a mid-diamond fashion, right? When really you have to engage these lobbies kind of on their rule sets, right? The int here into the corner is fine. Be careful you back off out here instead of just playing the corner here, close to the walls, corners, and covers. If there's nothing else that you get out of this one, that's going to be a really great place to start, and that also helps you, right? You can hold your shield here and like kind of corner peek and figure out what kind of damage you're about to be walking into rather than just kind of blindly bashing into there and then being punished out of a distance. I want you to, when you go in, have an idea of how you want to back out, how you want to get out of these positions, which are scary, dangerous, or in some cases even lethal. I'm going to try and let the VOD play out really quickly. I'm on a very short timeline, and I apologize. I do like taking my time to lay out all these principles, but I also think that we've gotten the most important things out of today as we can from this particular VOD. I actually do really like the Kiri gameplay. I really like the connections. I like the off-angling. I like the fact that it justifies you not playing in the exact same place, looking at the exact same things as your other support. I believe in support efficiency, which means generally my two different supports who are playing two different characters are helping the same fight in two different ways, the ways that suit their characters the best. I don't have Moira off-angling like a Kiri, and I don't have Kiri trying to play in the backlines like a Zen or an Ana, right? There are two different ways that these characters play, right? I do want you playing closer to your walls and your corners and your covers. I really like your ult timings. Your ult timings are like absolutely remarkable, and I think that you do pay good attention to where the enemies are. I would just have you paying a little more close attention to where your teammates are. That way you can also set yourself up for opportunities as well. Dropping off the high ground is a big no-no, and getting to high ground is a big yes. And so I want to be able to say yes when I see you go for climbing, go for wall climbing, go for high ground positions, go for angles that are easy, right? Going for corners to play cover. In fact, that's even an advantage of high ground, right? You've got this nice high ground position. If you're being shot at from someone down on the low ground, you just have to back up, right? Especially if it's close to a mega, playing our map control, right? And playing our timing, right? Making sure that we're not in at a time our team is out, and that we're not out at a time that our team is in, is also really, really powerful. You have some really nice care on your team as well. I like the instances of healing that we're seeing you do, and I also like the fact that you have a good knowledge that, you know, when you're on some of these characters like the Kiri, like the Brig, you can play closer or further away from your team's core. Just understand that that's going to change a little bit from scenario to scenario on the basis of like what the rest of your team is running, right? A Ramatra absolutely wants you to off angle a little bit and main angle a little bit, as opposed to a ball who really won't ever care where you're at, right? And so understand that on Brigida, right, you absolutely do want to play close enough to your core that you can see all of them, but if they're going to want to run on up on your Ramatra, then you might want to play your angles and your distance just a little bit more, as opposed to if you're playing on a Roadhog, sometimes, you know, he might be playing the same ranges that you want to manipulate, right? In which case, you guys are kind of a unit, just as long as you're not stacked up on top of each other, again, to take the same instances of damage. And remember, those ramp up very quickly, right? You were not taking damage, and then all of a sudden, you're one shot here, right? And so remember, with the rally ult as well, just hold up the shield, right? So that you can buy your team time, right? Your Reaper wants you in front of him so that you can build ult. Your Horde wants you living as long as possible so that he can use ult. Your Moira wants you to live while taking a little bit of damage so that she can build her ult. And the game is very much about building all of those ults as quickly as possible so you can use them. Alrighty, Faded, thank you so incredibly much for letting me use the gameplay from you today to bring you this VOD review. I am actually a huge fan. Although you're gonna hear me say that about a lot of different players and a lot of different play styles. I think that again, you have a really good sense of some of the things that you want to do. I just want you to be able to more fully commit to them, and I think that that will help open up some options in later matches. You are definitely not silver locked. Oh my goodness! With some of this insight, as well as the brilliant insight of some of the other coaches, and plenty of other people, in fact, including the online educators. Make sure that you're catching up on your material, all of the interactions and in the guides and everything. I think that you'll have a very easy time, in fact, ranking up. The connections are great. The movement needs to be perfected. The dedication to some of the rigor to some of these principles needs to be a little more closely refined. But the cool thing is that it's only going to take small adjustments from you to make big changes in your gameplay. And then when things get tough again, you can just come back to these principles and meditate on them to realign yourself with some of the options that will help you establish advantages, which eventually will help you win some of these games. Not every game is going to be winnable, but you are going to be able to make most of them playable. Thank you so much, Faded, for showing off the gameplay today, and thank you guys to anyone who wanted to tune in and watch. Feel free to leave positively oriented commentary in the comment section below. I'm not going to tolerate weirdness, absolutely not. And if you guys have any questions, then feel free to leave those as well. Faded, I'm looking forward to the opportunity possibly to see more gameplay in the future. But in the meantime, have fun in this first season of Overwatch. Thank you so much for letting yourself be observed and hopefully elevated a little bit here on the recording. And I will see you guys next time.